Camera's on.
We're in the work session
It is working.
with the Leavenworth County Port Authority. Welcome.
Good morning.
Please begin.
We're here and happy to be here. I'm the board for Leavenworth County Development Corporation. And
Doug Shimke, I'm current chair of the Port Authority, as everyone well knows.
And our main focus for wanting to meet is to try to figure out what we can do to help economic development keep occurring within Leavenworth County and what's the right structure. As we've seen things that have worked in the past, things that have been attempted that maybe didn't quite work as nice as we were hoping for, and just try to figure out what can we do to make sure that any sort of future agreements or arrangements are not adversarial in any form, fashion, but more of a, we're here to work. We're here to work for the good of the county. We're here to help the taxpayers. If we grow the economic base of Leavenworth County through businesses, that is positive because those businesses will pay real estate taxes, and that's the biggest advantage numerically that we can show you in a return is the more businesses we are able to bring to the county, the better off the property tax load will be.
Mr. Chair, are we meeting with LCDC and
I wanted, they had a presentation they want to talk about, so to me they're joined to hip, so I wanted to talk to them both about some issues that I had, and of course one of them was the not having a voting member, but we can get to that later. But I wanted to see what they had to say first, and so to me they're joined to hip. So go ahead, Mike.
We had a person come in today and was a public comment, and they were questioning the economic development entities and those type of things. Can you tell us over the past 10 years the Economic Development Corporation and the Port Authority benefits to the county and economic impacts that you've had to the county?
Sure. Yeah. You want me to pass that out? If you want. Copies. We put together a 10-year funding from 2015 to 2024, showing the Port Authority and LCDC's funding broke out separately. It's to the tune of about $2.4 million over those 10 years.
Thank you.
During that time period, we have helped and assisted 58 different companies with 651 new jobs, 411 retained jobs, so companies that potentially were going to move, we helped incentivize to stay here. Those existing businesses saved $1.5 million. The capital investment from those existing businesses when they reestablished and added lines to their production, in some cases, was $98 million worth of added investment. And the biggest is the capital investment over those same 10 years is $522 million worth of real estate that's been added to the county as a direct source of leads from the Port Authority and LCDC.
Does this include the money that sales tax dollars went to? Because we talked about that last meeting.
This has nothing to do with sales tax dollars.
Does it has to do with the $10 million we gave Tongi? Is that in there? Because y'all took care of that.
Numbers from the dollars that we received from the LCDC and the Port Authority from the county, and those companies that we helped bring to the county and help within the county.
So where Hill's Pet Nutrition, would those dollars fit into? I mean, this is what the county has given to LCDC, but what economic impact has the investment turned around and provided for Leavenworth County taxpayers? Like for Hill's Pet Nutrition?
There's $522 million worth of real estate that's been developed in the last 10 years.
That's real estate that's been developed. What kind of economic impact? Yeah, that's capital investment for the plant, the physical plant. But as far as what that's doing for our economy in Leavenworth County?
Well, I've done a little bit of studying. Lisa has the economic impact study specifically for Hills that shows the breakout of the actual dollars and how that follows through down. Mm-hmm. But of these $522 million worth of real estate, every one of those properties at some form is paying taxes or will be paying taxes to Leavenworth County.
And I think that's the kind of information that is helpful when we're dealing with constituents, is to let them know how much economic growth, impact, wages has come into the economy because of jobs that have been provided from Port Authority or LCDC.
Yeah, we are able to do various economic models when we do a proposal. Most of the cities require some sort of economic model to be completed.
There's 3 examples.
Before they either abate taxes or give any sort of incentives to the project. And every one of those projects that have been done have been in the positive category for everything, or it's basically not done.
Do we know how many wage producing jobs, for example, Hills has brought in?
It's at least 80, and I think it's closer to 100.
And what was the wage structure for those? Do you know?
I did not bring this one. If I remember correctly, it was between 50 and 65,000.
Yeah. Well, that is a really, I mean, I just throw this out there, and kudos to all the economic development folks for getting Hills Pet Nutrition down in Tonganoxie. It's the greatest, largest investment in private capital in the history of Leavenworth County, and it's a great thing, and it's bringing in really good jobs to the Tonganoxie area.
Would that have happened without you, or?
No, the entire Hills negotiation started and finished within the COVID timeframe, and that's one of the bigger things we can point to, obviously, for dollar amount. But we weren't able to do that if we didn't exist. If the staff didn't exist, they wouldn't have been able to negotiate that deal with the state, with Hills. The biggest advantage, one of the big advantages that LCDC and the Port Authority have is by having staff and having volunteers like myself and most of the people that are behind me here. Lisa and Diana are the only paid staff people. The rest of us are here in support of them, helping with these negotiations, understanding what is going on within a particular industry. We're here to help with the branching out of showing that we have other businesses that do. This is a good community to be if you're a business, is Leavenworth County. It's not just a government town. We have business owners here that are willing to put up investment to try to make this a better place for them to come.
Chad, you got something?
Yeah, just quickly to Commissioner Freed's question, I think that it's a fair one, and I'm guessing a lot of people ask, but if you don't exist, what still happens? You know, does DeSoto still get a battery plant? I mean, fair question. It does seem like you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So if you don't have somebody that can facilitate the request, respond timely, collaborate, work locally with the cities. I'm sure you guys sometimes struggle working with the cities. I did. Sometimes working between the county and city can be tough. I wish it wasn't. But I think it's a fair question.
Okay.
Well, I think on the Hills piece, we also got to talk about the other businesses that came to support Hills, right? Same thing with the battery plant. All businesses are going to support that.
Well, there's, cities making claims as well. And so I'm trying to figure out what portion of this would the cities have achieved if LCDC or Port Authority wasn't a part of it, or if LCDC, Port Authority are carrying these projects and they just simply wouldn't have happened if it was left up to the cities. That's the determination that I'm trying to make.
We look at ourselves as representing the county, regardless of what position that we were appointed. Where you appoint, so Leavenworth City gets 2 representatives, the county gets 2 representatives, and then the cities each get 1 representative on our voting board. But our board is open for anybody to come and sit in the meetings at any time. We record them all and everything like that. So I'd like to get back to the earlier part of your question. When we talk about our staffing, our staff spends a lot of time working with Kansas City people, people in western Kansas, people in other parts of the state to make sure that Leavenworth is on their agenda, that we are an option. Without them, there's no way to put ourselves at that table. A lot of these things take 5 and 6 years. Some of the things I get from sitting, I live in Basehor, is they ask for a bang for the buck. Well, when you talk about Hills, it doesn't just happen overnight. Sometimes these are 5 and 6 year development time frames. We have to go into executive session oftentimes when we talk about a specific company and real estate, which is one of the investments that we can make, one of the incentives that we can offer, because we can't let the people know what we're doing at that point because it's still private. They're still talking about maybe coming to Leavenworth.
Sure.
So you have executive sessions just like we do. So there's some things we cannot talk about with that, even though I'm a representative right now of Leavenworth County. I live in Basehor, but they asked me these questions, and I said there's certain things I cannot talk about. But to answer your question, yeah, we don't even get the table with these things without that help. Historically, and how long have you lived in the area, Ms. Reed?
42 years.
42 years, okay. Well, I haven't been here that long. But the family has in that particular regard. To watch Leavenworth County become almost a stepsister of Wyandotte County is discouraging. There's no reason for that to happen. And the only way we can get past that and get past the issue of the taxes is to bring economic development to Leavenworth County as a whole. I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's in Tonganoxie. I don't care if it's in Basehor. I don't care if it's in a little corner of right before we get into Atchison, wherever it takes, wherever we can get it. But they also say that small businesses are the backbone of American society, and that's true. The person who said it didn't live in a city big enough to understand it, but it's the big companies who pay all the taxes. You know, that's why we.
I just wanted to add to address Vanessa's question. Those of us in the Development Corporation, I think I speak for the private investors in our organization and the cities that fund our organization. We see all of us as a team, a combined, concerted effort that I cannot think of one time in the 20 plus years I've been involved in the corporation that any one person stepped forward and said, this is all because of me. And so we should make it very clear that these numbers that Lisa's put together today and that return on that investment, it is also due to our other partners that have invested their time and their efforts in that. Brian mentioned Hills Pet Nutrition. There was a committee of folks that the Department of Commerce worked with that included myself as a representative of the design firm that designed the Tonganoxie Business Park that could answer technical questions for the Hills team specific to the site. There were discussions of other sites that they were looking at, and that committee was able to work through a non-disclosure agreement that was signed. That is something we need to probably talk about or make sure everybody understands. One of the reasons Economic Development Corporations exists is because it gives governing bodies like you separation from that process, because there's a pretty high probability that Hills would have not had discussions with you or your staff members because you could enter into an NDA, but then it would be subject to Kansas Open Records Act. As an Economic Development Corporation, we are not. But anyway, so we met with Hills through the COVID process by Zoom meetings weekly for months, helping them get all the information they needed. Right now, today, it is our understanding that Hills is assessed on the county tax rolls at $90 million. And yes, some of those tax dollars are currently abated for probably, 8.5 more years roughly. And then it's our understanding that their property taxes at their 25% assessed value rate will be $2.9 million. We're not even taking credit for that yet because that's not tax money that's on the rolls. But if organizations like this don't exist, we don't have the opportunity to bring those projects. And to your point, Commissioner Stephen, an amazing project for the county. Could it have happened without us? Maybe. But again, we were the voice of the county to make sure they were getting all the answers they needed to make that decision to come home.
So when you talk about part of a team, one of the things about a team is communicating. Because a team, I just watched the movie Hoosiers the other night because of Gene Hackman, and it was like, pass the ball 4 times and then take the shot. Same thing when I'm talking about a team. We want to communicate with each other, and I think that is one of the reasons why, and go back to this Hills Pet Nutrition, we were a little bit blindsided on the Hills Pet Nutrition because we could have helped you with the community, and I did on social media as soon as that happened, promoted the project, but we didn't. I don't feel like in the beginning of that we were totally operating as a team because we didn't have the information as the Board of Commissioners.
And that was entirely at Hill's request.
And I'm just saying, when you're saying that we're operating as a team, is we want to operate as a team, and that's why we requested. At that point, that's when the request was made that we be more incorporated into your leadership.
So the point that I was trying to make is that the day the NDA lifted and the press release was made that Hills wanted to come and enter into the planning process in Tonganoxie, I personally emailed that press release to you.
Yes, and then we promoted
And
it.
that was the first point that we were out from underneath the NDA. And this is one of the things that we need to be clear about. We don't take action on anything as an organization. You guys do. The city of Tonganoxie does. The city of Lansing does. The city of Leavenworth does. Our goal is to answer all of the questions and bring the leads to the governing bodies that would then make the approvals. In Hill's case, they then came out of that NDA, made the public announcement, and then they negotiated all of their issues with the city of Tonganoxie directly because they were in the city of Tonganoxie.
Yeah.
So it was never an intent, and it is never our intent to exclude anybody from these processes other than when they're required by the organizations to be under an NDA.
Well, and we had a commissioner that had sat on your board of directors for many years, representative, and that was never a problem until recently. Reinterpretation of your bylaws was that our commission representative would not be allowed to have voting rights.
Are you talking to the board?
Yes.
The actual board?
Yes.
And that occurred, and I think Brian could speak to this as well, but since you asked.
But when Commissioner Cause was on the board, Commissioner Cause always had voting rights.
At that time, the county funded Leavenworth County Development Corporation directly. About 3 or 4 years ago, the county made the decision to pull that funding back, submit it to the Port Authority, and then ask the Development Corporation to get funded from the Port Authority. It was our review of the bylaws, and whether it's semantics or not, our intent was never to exclude Commissioner Reed from participating on our board. We had just been put in a very unique situation by a funding change that occurred at your request. And so,
But that had occurred several years before, and Commissioner Cause had been.
I think the team aspect you're mentioning, which I think is
Right.
you brought it up, as funding has been either reduced or reallocated, and for this group, I think it's important for us to talk about. We're trying to figure out how to divide sometimes tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars because we're at such a deficit, right? You guys have all heard me preach a million times that we're fifth in population, 12th in dollars collected. That is a very broken equation that very few counties have to live in, but we do. I think the earlier question about these cities, would some of this development happen without the LCDC or Port Authority? The cities have stepped up huge to not only continue to invest, but increase their investment. So I think that proves they believe that partnership works and that collaboration works. But it feels less of a team. I know when I was on the commission, we were funding both entities equally, and then the decision has been made over the last however many years to, again, reduce, reallocate, only invest in one. And that feels less team-like to steal from you. But
So did you just state that the cities are funding more to LCDC? Or
so it used to be that the county was by far the largest funding mechanism. Now that is no longer the case. It is the municipalities and the private sector that is the largest.
Hold
Do
on.
all
I don't
cities
think so.
participate?
Mike, Mark, hold on. Mark, who's the largest? Who puts in the largest amount? Not grouping the cities together, but who puts the largest amount in if you go individually on this?
Still.
Hold on just a second, guys. I got a question on the floor.
So I'll go ahead.
No, hold it.
Mr. Lawfrey.
I got it, Mark.
Well, Commissioners, far and away, Leavenworth County has participated in the Port Authority and LCDC. I think if you added up, if you even went to these 10 years and added it up, I'm sure that we probably outpace almost all of them combined. Recently, obviously, the county has reduced that. But I think this is where the semantics comes into play, and this is where the LCDC's stance is. We don't give them any money anymore, and we haven't for 3 years. However, the Port Authority continues to fund the LCDC at an amount probably equivalent to the cities combined. If not, it's pretty close. And the Port Authority's money, 100% comes from Leavenworth County. They don't have another funding source. So the money that's coming from the Port Authority to the LCDC is, in fact, county money. And I think that's the semantics issue that you were talking about. So, yes, the LCDC does not receive a check from the county anymore and hasn't since 2022. But they still receive county funds via the Port Authority.
Do all cities in Leavenworth County participate with LCDC?
Leavenworth, Lansing, and Tonganoxie.
Okay.
Baser does not.
Baser has
Chris dropped out.
They dropped out a few years ago, I think.
And then we have, I think, roughly 80 private investors, businesses within the county that fund us to the tune of somewhere around $60,000.
Why did Baser drop?
You'd probably have to ask Baser. I think we might surmise that they didn't have an industrial commercial property for us to market.
Okay.
They didn't have publicly controlled. That's one advantage that Leavenworth and Tonganoxie have, is a lot of the development properties that we're able to market are publicly held. And it gives them the ability to use the cost of the property as an incentive, which is one of the things a lot of times gives us an advantage over adjoining communities or adjoining counties, is that we do have property that thankfully the county, through the sales tax initiative, put $5 million into Leavenworth Park and $3.2 million into the Tonganoxie Park. So none of that is at a loss, especially from this board, of what that has allowed us opportunities and properties to market.
Let me change gears on you real quick, because first of all, I appreciate everything y'all do. I really do. I've known a lot of you a long time, especially Harlan. I'm the one that got him on the LCDC thing when it was called something else. My question is this: is I have a heartburn, to say it easy. Is if we've got to send in 85, 50,000, whatever, the Port Authority, the Port Authority's given 29, 30,000, whatever it is, I think we should have a seat on the LCDC. Now, if your mission statement says that you can't do it, we're still funding that from a different way. So to say we don't have a voting member on it that we've done for a while, I don't think that's acceptable. I think we need to relook at that, in my opinion only, relook at that and say, if you're getting any money from Leavenworth County, which is, indirectly or not, then we should have a voting member on that board. And that's how you work together.
That's 100%. We couldn't agree more. But we have a current set of bylaws that don't allow for that. That's all it is. There's nothing that says we can't amend the bylaws with a statement. But what you were asking us to do before was break our own, knowingly break our own bylaws. And that's all. I'll take full credit. I'm the one that reread the bylaws and said, if there's $0, I can't knowingly appoint somebody to a board if my bylaws say differently. We can change. There's a process to amend the bylaws. That's all we have to do instead of getting everybody upset about that.
Then listen to you speak. You're either a banker or an attorney. So I appreciate your comments. What Mike was saying also, what Mike was saying is that communication thing. I've worked with all of y'all for 30 years, and I think that was just a little disrespectful. Now, maybe the bylaw says that, but I would sure take that back and try to adjust that, because I think we should have a voting member. Chad, did you have something?
Well, I was just thinking indirectly, and I think this goes a little bit to Mark's point with semantics. Like, if the funding mechanism is going to be the board, and the Board of County Commissioners appoints 2 members to the board, like the Port Authority could not fund the LCDC as a point of fact. We hope that's never the case. To be honest, I'm sitting here going, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, it's not enough. You guys want to move the needle, we got to figure out how to move millions of dollars into economic development. Because I can tell you what, this whole group here, I know you guys hear about it constantly. If you hear something more than I'm frustrated about my property taxes, revenue neutral, mills not moving, don't care. Don't even want to go down that road. 1,000%, that whole fifth in size, $12 collected, we've got to figure out how to generate more revenue, guys. 1,000%. And if you guys know of another entity or group that is literally focused 100% of the time on development, which is new businesses and jobs, or retaining businesses and retaining jobs,
Miami County.
Trust me, Leavenworth County doesn't need Doge, you guys. You're running as lean as you can. I've seen it. I've been through every
It is.
absolute line item.
Well, you sit up here, Chad, with us. Miami County, I know, has their own thing, and they run through it. I'm not saying these aren't tough times. Goodness gracious, we're fighting property tax left and right, and hopefully some of the new legislation we got up there is going to offset it. And I don't have a problem with funding to a certain degree. In fact, I've even talked about maybe we should redo it and send part of that money directly to LCDC. I don't know what the answer is. I do know there's more than just what we're talking about here, and it's the communication. And if we don't fix that and start working with each other, just a second, Harlan, working with each other, then we're going to have some problems on both sides, because I can see frustration on both sides of this table. But one of the first things you got to do, and Chad, I agree with you, one of the first things you got to do, when I brought in Quick Trip, I'll tell you, this is what upset me at the LCDC. When we brought in Quick Trip, we've been doing it for 10 years, and then Tim came on back there. I went to LCDC. Lisa was not the chair, and I asked for some land because I wanted to keep co-op in Lansing. They sent me 3 phone numbers. We had to go out and look for the land, and we ended up putting it on Gilman Road and kept co-op in the thing. This is what I'm talking about, taking the time to talk to the cities and your partners a little bit more and make them feel more appreciated. There's nothing wrong with saying, listen, I can't tell you because we got a confidentiality. I get that. I've done them. Harley, you did them when we were on the council together, guy. I understand that. But this back and forth about, okay, since this doesn't, common sense says if we're giving you money, then and we're having problems with each other, then you come and say, I'm not going to have a board person on the board make a vote. Folks, that's just wrong. There's just no other way around it. Now, we can fix it. Wait a second, Chad. You have to get in line. We can fix it and say, if the board wants to give something directly to LCDC. I don't care, but that has to be fixed. And that was never communicated to me as a chair. And that kind of stuff, even if we're doing it, it has to stop. Harlan, you were first.
All right. I had a couple of points because I want to touch on one.
Hey, could you come up to the microphone, because people, I don't think they can hear you if you're out there.
Harlan Russell, Atlas Land Consulting. So one of the things that we've done within the Development Corporation just recently is we developed a committee that we first called it Governmental Advocacy Affairs or whatever. We had some name, and you can never pick a right name at affairs. But anyway, what we figured out is we're an education committee. And so we've been doing a lot of research about Leavenworth County. To Chad's point, one of the things that is killing us, and this is just information we came up with just recently, what would you guess, and I had a conversation with Jeff, so you don't get to guess, Jeff. You already know the answer. What would you think the ideal balance from a taxing standpoint that you would want residential property values versus commercial property values? 60-40 I heard back here. Anybody got a guess?
That sounds good.
Healthy communities around 70-30. You know what Leavenworth County is right now? 90-10.
Oh, we don't.
That's what we got to fix. Mike, I'm with you. Every person in this room is working towards the same goal. I stood up here as president of this corporation and asked for simple things like work sessions. We need to do this more often. We've been told by previous commissions we come up here too much.
Well, Harlan, at the last meeting, I don't know if you were there. I made it very clear to the Port Authority that I had no problems, the chair, having these every 6 months, because I think that's one of the problems that we're going back to the communication again.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to. As a chair, we can set the agenda and you can come up and visit. I don't mind listening to you. Honest with you, because then I learn something. There's always something I take away when y'all speak to me.
I would actually love quarterly.
We'd love to get back to that.
We did quarterly one time, and then y'all were boring, so we went back to
right. Exactly right.
We went to every 6 months. So either way is fine with me.
I'm not for boring.
And I brought that up at the last meeting to talk about you need to get you in front of us more often. So
all right, so we'll agree. Quarterly sounds like a great option.
Yeah.
Next subject.
Is somebody keeping notes?
I'm trying.
One thing too, Harlan is the Mike Stephen of Leavenworth County and asking questions. I started with him too many years. Go ahead, Mr. Russell.
That's because I didn't like voting on dump trucks without telling the community what they were paying for them. But anyway, that's
another story.
I think the other thing, we feel like we've done a lot for the county, and I tell you, we did several years ago. I think Mike may have been the only one.
2021.
We did a study of what the county needed. We were asked, look at what we're doing, go out and go to talk to other people. And Mark was on that committee. And we interviewed Kansas Department of Commerce. We interviewed the Kansas City Area Development Corporation. We published a report. I think it was 14 pages long. And at the time, what we thought the county really needed was a community development director that would invest in infrastructure. Because what we found was when we looked at the mechanisms that were within the county, between the Port Authority and the Development Corporation, what was missing was someone solely looking at and investing in infrastructure for the county, going out and finding grants, bringing monies in. That was when the County Economic Development Coordinator position was created. That we think has failed. You have the report.
I
Good.
have the report.
Good.
I'm going to ask you some questions about
Good.
it.
And I think, what I'd like to do is use today, I'd like us all to go home and mark it on our calendars as the day we put everything in the history behind us as people that care and are passionate about economic development in the county, and we'll move forward. And we'll quit talking about the past, because the past isn't always pretty. But if we don't get on board and we don't get rallied up and get our ducks in a row, the surrounding counties are blowing us away in attracting development to their counties. The only way, to Chad's point, that you're going to stop citizens coming in here and complaining about taxes, we've got to increase the commercial tax base in the county. We cannot continue to balance budgets on residential housing. You guys know more than anybody. It's impossible.
I'm going to quote previous Senator Jeff Pittman here for a moment. He said, ironic that at least half the members on the Port Authority are wealthy business owners appearing to want to put the burden of taxes on the backs of the working people of Leavenworth while they look for their own gains. And the folks putting this survey want it all to go to one economic development group that isn't even elected. I don't think this was well thought out, to say the least. Where are the numbers that prove this has or would work? What does it go to specifically? Who is accountable? What's the framework and strategy they will use that will be different from attempts before? Economic development is critical to a community, but sending, this was in regards to the tech survey, message out simply wanting to raise taxes doesn't really help. They need to do better. So those are the kind of things that no matter which side of the aisle we're on politically, we face. And so can you talk to that, or does anyone else
Do you want
speak
talk
to
that?
it?
I know we actually had some communication with Senator Pittman after that. We saw that statement. We felt a little bit blindsided by it because he had been such a good advocate of ours, and we.
Chad, you've been patiently waiting.
And Chad, just to let you know, used to be the Mike Steven.
Yeah, that was
Right. Chad Shimke, 11710 Kelly Road. Commissioner Reed, that statement, I hadn't heard it. I didn't even know it existed. And to be honest, you probably don't want to know what I think about the state government as a whole. And I think most of you I know pretty well are in the role to try to figure out how to do better than your predecessor, right? Can we spend less? Can we generate more? Can we reallocate the burden? I don't think we have a lot of big government supporters. And sometimes when you talk about statements like that, it feels like a little bit of big government and government control. And I'm guessing there's at least a few of you up there that have probably found some real either interest or excitement in DOGE and what it's doing at the federal level. When we talk about the participation communication, I'm thinking back to my brief time on the board. There was always quarterly meetings, and at least one of us would always attend, the monthly LCDC meeting. That's changed for a lot of reasons. Let's figure out how to fix it, right, and move forward. But I get pretty animated when we talk about, control or having more control, because I don't think that, in my opinion, we're not giving credit where it's due. So when you have dozens of people that are donating their time, trust me, I'm missing meetings today to be here. Everyone is. I think that's a little bit short-sighted. When you have dozens of business owners that employ, hundreds, if not thousands of people, I think there's a lot of experience to tap into. And no offense to anybody that might comment on social media, if you've not done those things, if you've not built a business, if you've not managed people, then you don't know what you're talking about, because it's hard. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. There's also a lot of risk. Building anything, there's a lot of risk. It's easy to talk big on social media. We all see lots of people do it from time to time.
I think I
But
was,
to go do it is a whole other thing.
you know, how do you portray a public facing when it comes to an accusation of, or, you know, factual statement that there are developers involved, there's bankers involved, there's obvious private interest, but we're using public taxpayer dollars. So how do you talk to that?
Well, I think the fact that we've got private investment, city investment, and for the longest time, county investment proves that there's belief in what that ROI brings and what it does.
I would just say that, and a short answer to that is that all of these investors that we're talking about.
Hey, Harlan, we take these things. Could you come on up front, too? I know you like to be on the camera.
Back in.
I just wanted to say that
Chad, sit down.
when we think about all of these people that maybe we group together, I know he wasn't talking about me. I'm not a wealthy business owner, so I can speak to this, I think.
When did that happen?
These people are making major investments in the corporation, some of them thousands of dollars a year that they're to be involved. And then more importantly, they're committing hundreds, if not thousands, of man hours of their knowledge to the organization, again, so that we can bring development to Leavenworth County.
But the argument is, of course, that it's in their best interest, that these are like insider deals. This gives them a heads up,
Yeah, let's let David talk to that. Tag him in.
Next.
So my name's David Schrader, and I own Great Western Manufacturing Company, the oldest manufacturing company in Kansas. I've been on the LCDC board for 20 years, was president for a while, and every year there's always a problem with funding. We're spending more time trying to get our funding than in it. My business is worldwide. I don't have any. I have one customer in Leavenworth, Cereal Ingredients, very small customer, and I'm not here to make myself any bigger or better customer for them. It's all because I want the best for Leavenworth County. And until we get together and can decide what that is, we're going to be fighting this battle forever.
And we've been fighting it too long.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that.
So, can I
Mr.
ask
Reed?
Wait a second. Next. Come on,
Jeremy?
So to
It's like a wrestling match.
Yeah, Jeremy Greenemeier. Anyway, I get the question, or at least I think I understand it. To me, it seems like a framing problem, whereas it was stated as if having bankers, developers, landowners on the board is a bad thing. I think you just named local industry experts with a reason to be involved. From someone who's been on the recruiting committee when it comes to getting new board members, is the expectation really that you're not going to attract people who have the expertise? I mean, that's the other side of this thought process, is why wouldn't you want the people?
Who's going to make up that board if it's not us, right?
Well, not just us, but is the expectation that you don't want bankers, that you don't want developers, which to me seems like the worst option.
Well, I think, I try to wear, I always say, wear the hat before I got on the, right? What were my thoughts before? What questions do I have? And so you'll always, hopefully, find me asking those questions. The questions that I hear on I get the phone calls, the perception. And so hopefully being able to work out how to be a part of this, I want to make sure that our perceptions are honest, that what people believe about what we're doing, how we're spending the tax dollars, how they're being invested, who's on the boards, who's making the decisions. I want to make sure that what's out there is true, not that we're just putting a facade up to protect ourselves and make ourselves look better. But these are some of the things that I heard a lot while I was campaigning for this position, right? So I'm asking the questions that I think a lot of people have, just to try to make sure that it's very transparent, it's out in the open, and I can refer to this meeting and say, hey, I asked that question, go back and watch Mr. Greenemeier's response or whatever. So.
Well, and if you had one banker who was getting all the loans, or one realtor who was getting all the listings and sales, you might have a point. But on our board, we have, how many bankers are on our board? Five? How many realtors and landowners? There's multiple. So there's I promise you, no one here is getting rich volunteering for this thing. I mean, Brian, I'm sure you've lost dozens of loans that might have originated here, where people show up with their own lender. This is 100% a volunteer thing, and so the fact that you have people who know the process of development
should be a positive, not anything to be suspicious of. Although I understand why someone who doesn't know would might come to that conclusion.
And I mean, it's not people who aren't in business either. You know, there's people who are have multiple locations in various counties or states coming forward and going, you know, I don't want the superintendent of Leavenworth Schools being on the LCDC board. I think that's a conflict of interest. You know, the school's going to have property up for sale. So there's a lot of moving parts that I just want to make sure we're thinking about consistently all the time, and just kind of trying to have these conversations. So I appreciate you being.
Well, and I would rather know what you're hearing than not know. Yeah. That was just my response. So I was compelled to.
She's right, Jeremy. That's honestly what we're hearing. And I've been on this. You know, I was on the board 30, 40 years, or whatever. So I try to answer them, but sometimes it's. Well, first of all, you're going to have some people that aren't going to believe anything you say. But if you can get the education out to other people, which I hope we're trying to do by even having this meeting, it helps. Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to address it with Harlan in his report, but just to touch on that last is we hear a lot from constituents and in town hall meetings and in correspondence from people about crony capitalism and a lot of it is not about you folks, but it's about perception of you folks and us folks. I mean, obviously, elected officials take it on the chin. They are not respected, and that's because of the actions of some elected officials. That's why they're not respected. That's the same thing with attorneys and banker. Everybody, the reputations have suffered because of those things.
Well, probably the number one chief complaint I get is the development space that's basically at Eisenhower and 20th and all of the things that went into that. So I think that's a hurdle still.
And I think that's one of the things we're really seeing with our education committee. And it's not the electorate's fault that they don't fully understand development. But there's a pretty common misperception, I think, and when I monitor a lot of social media, I try to stay out of commenting on a lot of social media. But there's a lot of thought out there that if you want a Panera Bread or a Kohl's or whatever, that you call them up and you tell them, we want you to come to Lansing. We need you to come to Tonganoxie.
Digging the foundation.
I wish it worked that way because none of us would be standing in front of you right now. But it's simply not true. And I had a client years ago who's the head of development for Kohl's, and they're in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. And at the time, I was on the city council, and we were working on Lansing Town Center, and I went to David, and I said, hey, what would it take to get you to come to Lansing? He goes, well, Harlan, to be really honest, I've never seen a submittal from Lansing. And he says, number two, you've never been to my office in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. And he says, I could take a picture on my desk right now, and I envisioned him holding his hand out. I have a stack 2 feet high of every community in the United States that thinks they deserve a Kohl's. And it's getting out of your comfort zone. It's getting in their space, and that's what our staff spends countless hours doing. One of our biggest frustrations is, and believe me, I'm here because I want a solution. We want a solution. Let's get this funding thing figured out so that we can focus on economic development. Nothing's more frustrating than spending valuable staff time trying to find funding or address funding. And I hope that you understand what I'm trying to say, because at the end of the day, we want our staff members out selling the county. And
so let me ask you a question.
Absolutely.
That dovetails right into question. From your report, we never really finalized.
That's right. You were on that committee too.
Yes,
I forgot.
we were. It was a consensus within the task force, the economic development within the county can be well served with an approach that seeks to market and develop programs for overall county and its communities. Primary focus should be in the areas of industry, commercial development, job creation, labor force development. Secondarily, infrastructure investment will prepare areas for further economic development. So we had talked about that LCDC would be, for instance, like the marketing arm for economic development. Mm-hmm. Then the Port Authority, because of the structure and because of certain legal method, they can own property, they can make convey property, would be our deeds. That the county would be sort of the entity to kind of fund these projects and development. So that is something I don't think that we ever got into concrete and figured out how that was all going to work together.
I would agree. We never got to sit down with the
spec
commission.
building program.
The spec building program. We never got together and discussed that report.
No, we came to a kind of a
Standstill.
and I think that's probably a mistake.
Yeah.
And I will say that our approach, Mr. Cole, I did read in our 2 meetings ago, read accomplishments. I think he had many accomplishments, but I think it was a little disjointed still. And I still think the communication part and the working together part and I think we're at a disadvantage to other counties right now because we're not working together enough.
Yep.
Can I offer something here to Ms. Reed? As opposed to what Mr. or Representative Pittman said, I know you and Mr. Dove probably weren't aware that Senator Marshall was in town, 8 months ago, and specifically asked for a meeting with us, Port Authority and LCDC, because of connections to the rest of our staff had set it up. So he came in as a U.S. Senator and said, what can we do for Leavenworth? What can I do to help Leavenworth out and everything? So we met with him and everything. So
Did that meeting go better than his Western Kansas?
Yeah, he didn't do well out in Western Kansas, but and I felt sorry for the poor guy, but nonetheless.
I heard that was like after 45 minutes of questions. Who knows? So.
Yeah, we were shocked, but nonetheless, it does show that we're getting on the radar. We're keeping ourselves in front of everybody we possibly can as far as getting economic development. I grew up in Shawnee, Merriam and Shawnee, and seen what's happened there. Gardner, Edgerton, all those things taken off. We're the last quarter of the pie to be developed around Kansas City. It's going to happen. But how fast, we can't control. It's happened a lot in Wyandotte, for goodness sakes. So what can we do to do that? It can't be done for free. But we didn't advertise the fact. We didn't go out in the newspaper and say, hey, listen, Roger Marshall came in to talk to us and wanted to speak to us. That's not what we're about. We don't have any egos here in that particular regard. We just want to do what's best for Leavenworth County. You guys have enough to do, for God's sakes. You don't want to take these phone calls. You can't take these phone calls. You don't have the people to handle these phone calls. And basically, this year, the money that we get from the county, why we can barely survive on, doesn't even complete pay our staff. And if we lose our staff, that's the people who are appoint people on this.
And I appreciate your question earlier about my history here in Leavenworth County.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm 6th generation, and so I really care about the success of Leavenworth County.
Yeah, my folks grew up when Cherokee and everything were great, huge businesses. Every business along there, and everybody wants to see that again. But that's going to take a lot of investment. A lot of the people that own those buildings down there and everything, for instance, and Commissioner Cuthbert and I have talked occasionally about that. Those buildings aren't occupiable by a business until the owners of those buildings bring them up to current standards and everything like that. But anytime we get a request for business in downtown Leavenworth, we forward it to the Leavenworth people so they can talk to them. We don't turn anything away. But we're trying to get on the map and stay on the map with our local legislators, stay on the map with the cities that surround us, Kansas City, and they oftentimes will serve on boards. I could give you the accolades that they've earned, but they attend all these meetings, both nationally and locally, to make sure that we are on the map so we can get people like Hills.
Mark, was it my understanding that the county commissioners used to have an executive board seat, or am I mistaken with that?
No, they had requested one, but they've never had one.
Oh, they requested one. Okay.
And is that our policy? Do we have a policy?
The Board of County Commissioners did approve a policy that required if we were a certain level of funding for any organization that they have a position on the executive.
So that's new, right? So when you went, it was a couple of years ago, I think. But just the point about being, specific about what our policies are. I mean, you reread your bylaws, and that you said we got to go by our bylaws. Well, we have a policy, and you would also expect us to go by our policy as well. So, what my question for you is: you have $700,000 in reserves at the Port Authority currently, correct?
Not cash reserves.
Well, how much is your cash reserves?
Well, that depends. Once you take the value of the land out of there, we may have a year's worth of money left to pay our staff.
Well, how much is that?
Because once you take
I,
land valuation,
the last information I had was the Port Authority had $700,000 cash reserves.
it is, but when you look at the balance sheet and you see, it's not cash, when you see the
Asset.
land valuations, and that's
Okay.
what we use as an incentive oftentimes to bring people to the tables, we can
Lisa's
offer
got
a
it.
discount
All
on
right,
the
we'll
land.
find out what the cash reserve is here.
Mike, real quick, while they're trying to pull that up, because I heard the Panera thing mentioned earlier. I don't know if that's Harlan or who. So pre-COVID, it took $7 million liquid to get a Panera franchise for anybody that's interested.
I love
If
Panera.
you know that person, I'd love to go talk to them tomorrow and see if we can bring them. Now, the first thing you're going to say is,
700,000.
where do you have a building? We also track the dozens and dozens and dozens of opportunities we turn away because we don't have product, which is also frustrating.
Yeah.
Harlan, do you have one more? We're getting ready to wrap this up in a little bit, folks. We're going down the same road over and over.
150, 260.
While they look through the numbers, there is,
That's where you get the money. Okay.
so when LCDC extended the MAPS, the industrial spec building program to MAPS, we had to basically write, we have a $200,000 loan on our books that skews those numbers because that's cash that won't be realized till something like 2043. So it's real easy to look at the numbers that we have and think we're loaded with cash, but we, as Doug was trying to say, or I'm probably getting ready to say when I shut up, of the cash values of the properties that they hold, and as well as those other commitments.
Well, I wish you had $5 million in the bank.
We do too.
So that we could
Me too.
get the next industrial park set up.
Amen.
But
Well,
how much
it
do you
could take
have?
A lot more. You were very close to being correct. Your information was correct. The cash value of that, when you look at the overall value of the organization, if you want to look at it that way, it is much higher than that. But once you throw the land value out, we do have about $700,000 in cash.
Okay, so and the intention of the Port Authority, I don't know if you guys have had a work session and kind of, is your goal to get another industrial park established in Leavenworth County, or is your goal, do you have a specific goal that the Port Authority has established moving forward?
Saving it to pay our staff.
What's that? Well, but
I mean,
I want to know what our goal for economic, we can staff.
$700,000 for an industrial park.
yeah, but you have to remember, and for
What's
and
the
maybe you
goal?
two- maybe you two know already. We have
Yes.
the industrial park that we actually have our meetings in. Gary Carlson was given to us.
Right.
Okay, was given to us. Land now, we have a prime piece of land out by Tonganoxie that would be a perfect acquisition. Perfect acquisition. All the electrical, all the necessary utilities are right at the corner of it. It's part of a ranch that's going on the market and everything like that. And they even suggested it to us. They offered it to the cities in Tonganoxie first. I was in that meeting down there, had me invited to it for purchase and everything before it even went to the market. The point is you're talking about $5-6 million. The price of land is incredible now. So the idea
That's
of
the kind of thing that you should come when those kind of things. That's why the communication is important, because when that kind of thing
It
comes
wasn't my
up,
place.
you come to the county, and the county has different kind of resources,
Well, but-
and that's why we need to get on the same page how we're
in the
going to work
monthly
this.
board meetings, we talk about there's an industrial, there's a committee, there's an infrastructure committee, because it's also one of those things like, it'd be really great to go put a park there, except the utilities and infrastructure don't support it, right? As you guys know,
That's expensive.
it's real expensive.
Well,
So we try to be smart and figure out
for
where the
Lansing, we're
assets
still
are
putting
to
wastewater
make
there.
the most sense.
Okay,
Mr.
guys, let me-
Mr. Cos isn't here today. If I get one more point in, Mike, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Cos isn't here today, but he's in charge of our industrial site committee. And what he's done is he's taken the county of Leavenworth and he does these overlays, and they're very impressive overlays. Not just a matter of land available, but is land available we can use. We could have a little bitty space out in the middle of Leavenworth County that somebody's willing to give us a great buy on 50 acres, but it's nowhere near a road. It's nowhere near utilities. You're talking about the infrastructure to get there makes it impossible. We haven't gotten it distilled down to maybe 5 or 6 sites yet. We're working that way because you get sites that are owned by various family members. Could we tie those together
Right.
and everything like that? But it doesn't escape the fact that I don't think, knowing how tough it is for you guys and the job you do in the commission, how are you going to come, all of a sudden, we're going to come to you and I need $8 million to buy this. How do you do it?
Well, that is where you communicate. We've got this project, and if we can get the funding, there is some mechanisms for funding.
Jeff, you have a question?
So
Comment.
I know you guys have came and pleaded your case. I just want to try to plead our case from this side, and I get it. I think we all understand exactly what's going on. The problem we have is your money comes out of the county budget. Were any of you here when that lady got up and talked this morning?
I watched the video.
So the problem is most people think like she does. They don't do their homework. They don't understand how this works, what's going on. And the short answer is always cut the county budget. So you guys are the lowest hanging fruit in our county budget because we have depleted our budget so much over the last 30 years. We are now having to make decisions between things like replacing a bridge or funding LCDC. So the problem is getting the public educated to understand you have to spend money to make money. They don't understand that. Not investing in economic development is just as bad as not funding maintenance on depleting assets for the county like roads and bridges. It's the same thing. But the problem is when I keep saying this county budget we have right now is not sustainable, this is one of the things I'm talking about. We're going to have to choose between a bridge or funding LCDC. You don't fund LCDC, it's like I just said, you're creating an unsustainable budget. But people don't understand that. Cut the budget, cut the budget, cut the budget, cut the budget. That's all we hear is cut the budget, which is why I like the idea of you guys getting under your own mill levy, because then you're not under the county budget anymore. It won't keep coming up. What are they doing for the money? We're spending all these millions of dollars on LCDC. What are they producing? That won't be an issue anymore. It used to be that way back when it was LAD, I think, and it worked way better. I don't know why it ever got away from that, but it needs to go back to that. But that's one of the biggest problems is we have to decide with a depleted, unsustainable budget, what's the lowest hanging fruit?
Do you think that would pass?
What's that?
No.
Well, I mean,
let me touch.
Can I answer that?
Let me just
The
touch
mill
on
levy, will it pass a vote in public? Probably not.
Let me touch on it real quick. I was at the meeting.
That's what
today
needs to happen.
when a good presentation was given by, and they did their homework. They went out and asked the folks in the community, do they support economic growth? Well, the number is way high. Do you afford no tax to pay for it? The number's way low. So an education program has to happen. Two things, and folks, we've been going for a while. Two things we need to come out of this, and I think both of them are very important. First of all, I think the quarterly reports will keep us in the loop to help about the mill levy and things that y'all are trying to do, or however you're going to approach that, so we have an understanding, so we can share with you. The second thing is, I'd really like to see LCDC look at their bylaws and put our voting member back on. Now, we can sit here and talk about 10,000 other things, but we just keep going over the same thing. So I'd really like to end it unless somebody has a dying desire. Harlan, not you, has a dying desire to speak.
I do.
I've got one for Ms.
Okay.
Reed, since she was asking the question, and for Commissioner Cuthbertson. We are, in fact, looking at, because we have in our bylaws the ability, being the Port Authority, to ask for a mill levy. Okay, and we have employed, and Mike's been there for that process, we've employed a company who are experts at this sort of thing. We know what we have to do. We're going out and we're going to educate the populace over the next 9 months. We have 9 months to do this before we know when the most opportune time is to put it on the ballot measure. It's not during a general election. It's during a different time. We know how long it takes for the county commission to approve that to go on to an election. And we're going to spend a lot of time educating the county and its people, the people of the county. You all know. I don't have to tell you what's going on. You know what we're talking about. We talk in this meeting. We may see different sides of the coin, but we're going to go out into the communities. We're going to address it at town hall. We're going to address it at city halls. We're going to address it. Anybody wants to talk about it. Our meetings are open. People can join us anyway. Commissioner Kaz used to dial in. That's before we had a commissioner actually sitting on a voting member of our board. She dialed into all the meetings and everything like that. So it wasn't like we were non-communicative. She was there for all those meetings. But the point is here, we're going to spend the next 9 months, and we're going to take another poll 6 months from now and find out whether we've moved that needle. If we haven't, we're not going to spend the money. We're not going to ask the county to spend the money to make an election out of it. But we may need to spend more money for the following year. Somewhere along the line, we have to do exactly what you're suggesting, and that is to move that out so you don't face the heat for that. Okay, you don't have to keep coming up with the funding. It will be directed to the Port Authority by that into the Leavenworth County Development Group. Okay, but we're not going to do that without the voters' approval. But we want them to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. And they understand too. I think if we get the opportunity to tell them that, hey, somebody else got to pay the taxes.
Yeah, I think you're going in the right direction. On the last meeting, I said how we're going to about do it. Vanessa, do you have anything else?
So if we talk about industrial parks, well, just maybe taking the hills, as was talked about earlier, with what was it, 100% for 10 years, maybe tax abatement or something like that.
We don't make those decisions.
Right, right.
They make
But-
a payment in lieu of tax, though.
But if we're like, let's say it's, we achieved this industrial park and then a business comes in that isn't paying tax. So I would completely disagree with Commissioner Culbertson. I would really hesitate to call anyone uneducated or say that they don't do their homework, they don't understand when they come and speak publicly. I think more that, people aren't stupid. And so it's very important that when we bring businesses in, they pay tax. Otherwise, everyone's going to say, oh my gosh, they're not paying tax for 10 years. How much of our tax dollars went towards this? Or when you talk about doing a poll, how much of our tax dollars are going to do a poll and an education campaign and all this stuff leading up to maybe a vote that fails? And then what return did we have on that tax money? So I think we just need to make sure that the conversation is full, which is what I was trying to get to earlier, to acknowledge the different pieces of it. And I do think there does need to be more education. It's probably just as complicated as a school district, having the public understand all the inner workings, but hopefully we can do better with that.
Oh, from a national perspective, I agree with you completely. Why do we keep giving incentives to Walmart? We've had 3 of them now in this town. Why do we keep doing that?
And then they move it after 10 years and rebuild another one. I get
Yeah.
that. Mike, did you have a question?
I just have, to summarize the after-action report, we're going to do a quarterly report. We're requesting that you review your bylaws to put a board member on.
Got it.
That was like the position that Commissioner caused. And then the third thing is you realize our policy is for the executive committee that you at least review that and give us feedback on that.
We can do that in the quarterly thing. Harlan, you've talked too much.
Can I just close? I got to.
You've got to close. I swear you're the Mike Stephen of the LCDC.
One, we have a board meeting tomorrow. I think in lieu of it's county money coming through the corporation, whatever, I will personally make a motion tomorrow at the board meeting to bring Vanessa onto the board, and we can let the board decide that. I would just commit to that. Because I think listening to Mark, and I don't want to get into semantics, but I think at the end of the day, let's just get Vanessa on the board, right?
Or a county commissioner.
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
When we talk about this mill levy, one of the things that's going to make this potentially very successful, if we can do it, is that we need your support. We need the community to know that you are behind this mill levy for economic development. I don't expect an answer today.
But Harlan, I think that's where your quarterly report, that's what I was trying to lead into by saying I was impressed when I was attending the meeting. That quarterly report we're going to be doing is going to give you the opportunity to come tell us, or other people, because I'll probably be in most of those meetings, to see what's going on. So that'll help the process right there.
Yeah. And then I would be more than happy at any time to sit down and talk about tax incentives and why tax abatements make sense. Because quite honestly, had the tax abatement not happened, Hill's Pet Nutrition would have got built in Topeka, Kansas.
And if you can talk tomorrow to your board about some kind of a process where we can continue talking about this.
Absolutely. Can we have quarterly work sessions with you guys?
Yes. Work session is over. Thank you for everybody for attending.